Hello and welcome to our Visions of Employment webinar. I'm Carol Collins, Employment Services Supervisor with the Massachusetts Commission for the Blind.
And I'm Daniel Martin. I'm the Employment Services Specialist at MCB. And we're very excited to have you here with us today as we explore the numerous ways that MCB can support your organization in hiring employees who are legally blind.
During this session, we are going to talk about the support MCB provides before, during, and after the hiring process. We will demonstrate some assistive technology and discuss orientation and mobility. Then we will hear from employers who have successfully integrated their employees who are legally blind into their workforce, sharing their insights and tips.
Absolutely, and we're very much looking forward to that. But first, to put things in a little bit of perspective for all of you, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, approximately 8.2 million Americans, roughly 2.5% of the U.S. population, have what's called a vision difficulty. Now, regardless of whether they acquire this at birth or later in life, many of these individuals grow up to become very resilient and resourceful and develop several adaptive techniques. These skills that they acquire can translate into numerous creative problem-solving techniques and innovation in the workforce. However, sadly, despite this, the employment rate for those who are legally blind in the U.S. is only about 44%. This is in contrast to about 75% of the general population. So why is this? Well, there can be numerous ways or causes, but we believe one of the largest is simply a lack of knowledge. Many employers may simply be unaware of the vast skill sets that these potential employees bring to the table, or the numerous support systems which are already in place to ensure a smooth transition into your office.
And that's why we're here, to close that knowledge gap. Our job seekers range from entry-level workers to PhDs and executives. With the right accommodations, most jobs can be performed by people who are legally blind. Advances in technology now make careers in fields like human services, software development, finance, and even nursing fully accessible. But before we dive into the services MCB offers, I'd like to welcome Commissioner John Oliveira to say a few words.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, Carol. And great to be with you here today. And you're here to learn lots of new things. And we hope this webinar brings you all that information that you're looking for. We know that you have lots of questions, and we hope to give you all those answers today, and also to help you with any concerns that you might be having regarding hiring someone who is legally blind. As Dan said, a substantial number of individuals who are legally blind are unemployed, and the agency's mission on the vocational rehabilitation side is to get as many of those individuals, work with as many as we can to get them employed. But we can't do that without you. And so today we want to educate you about the potential opportunities that you have to partner with us and work with some of our consumers, which we have vetted and are prepared to go to work and help your company reach its goals or your agency. So again, feel free to ask any questions. This is a safe environment. No question we'll answer any question we can. Don't worry about if it sounds like a decent question or not so decent question, or if it makes sense to you. If something doesn't make sense to you, if you have a question, feel free to ask it in this environment. There's no judgment here. We're all trying to educate you. That's our goal here, to make sure that we try to get as much information out to the public as possible. So you'll see some interesting items on our technology side. You'll learn some interesting information. You'll learn how different methods, different materials can be accessed in your office. So therefore, just feel free to ask questions. We'll be here at the end. We can answer any questions at that point, or whatever point we go through the webinar here. And again, thank you all for taking the time to drop in with us today. And we'll be here to answer any questions. I'll be here throughout the seminar help out at the end if there's any questions you may have. Thank you so much. Back to you, Carol.
Great, thank you so much. Now let's take a closer look at what MCB offers. Remember, our services are free, individualized, and tailored to the needs of each employee and workplace.
Yes, that's an excellent point, because one of the biggest myths out there about hiring someone who's legally blind is that it's very complicated or costly. Well, the truth of the matter is that there is very little to no expense taken on by the employers. And MCB is here to guide you through every step of that process. In fact, we're providing services and support to our consumers often before you even extended an offer. And as to completion, well, you don't need to be an expert on any of this content. That's what we're here for.
That's exactly right, Dan.
So
Let's start with some basic etiquette that creates an inclusive environment. Blindness is a spectrum. Some individuals have no light perception, while others have partial vision. In general, you can think of legal blindness starting at about 1/10 of normal. If you have not interacted ever with someone who's legally blind, here are a few tips to consider. Ask the individual, not the person next to them. Always talk to that person, not the person next to them. Use everyday language. Phrases like "see you later" or "did you see the game last night" are perfectly fine. Always ask someone before offering assistance. Not everyone wants to be guided. Not everyone wants help. Some do. So always ask. If guiding a person, please let them hold your elbow rather than pulling them. Pulling a person can be pretty dangerous. And remember, if a person uses a guide dog, that service animal is working. As adorable, if you're a dog lover like me, as adorable as that animal might be, do not pet them, do not distract them. That dog is working. Very, very important for the safety of the user.
Those are all really good tips. I can speak personally to the last one as a seeing eye dog user. So now the question, which I hope many of you out there in the audience are asking yourself is, well, that's great, but how can you partner with us? Well, there are several ways, which we're about to go into. But first, I just want to point out that, again, if you have any questions about any of these services or anything we've discussed throughout this webinar, we're happy to arrange an in-service for you. The ESS team, Employment Services, does that very often, either at your office in person or in a virtual setting. So you could start off by hosting an intern as part of our long-standing summer internship program. Every summer and leading up to the summer, MCB works with its young late high school, college, and grad students to place them in opportunities to intern and volunteer all across the state. And we provide each intern with a stipend and the technical assistance for the employers. Another thing you could do is you could donate your time to conduct a mock interview or an informational interview with one of our job seekers. We, of course, do mock interviews all the time, but our consumers can always benefit from having an in-depth conversation with somebody who's actually working in the field that they're targeting. And this helps them to tailor their presentation skills to that unique industry. You could also schedule sensitivity training for you and your staff. We already talked about in-services, but say hypothetically you bring on somebody, or you're about to, who is legally blind. We can visit your office and have a chat and discuss all the numerous ways you can make your work environment more accessible and more welcoming to the new employee. And lastly, to round this out, we're always excited here at the Employment Services team to receive new job posting leads from our numerous employer partners. That way we can share them with our most qualified and job-ready candidates and connect you with them.
Yes, and when it comes to interviewing for those open positions, focus on the candidate's skills, not their disability. It's fine to ask if accommodations are needed for the interview, but questions about accommodations on the job should really wait until after a conditional offer is made. If we refer a candidate to you, it's obvious that they're legally blind, and you may wonder what questions are appropriate to ask during the interview. But don't worry, we're here to guide you through that process. First and foremost, remember that a person who is legally blind is a person first. Their vision loss does not define them any more than their hair color does. Our team can help your hiring managers navigate the interview process, ensuring compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act, or the ADA.
Absolutely. So let's say you've just hired somebody who's legally blind. What happens next? Well, MCB is here to support you and your new employee even after that process. And we do this in a number of ways. One of the most common services we provide our consumers is orientation and mobility training, or O&M for short. How that works is a highly trained O&M instructor works with your new employee to get them acclimated to your office area. So working out a new and safe commute that works best for them, whether that's taking a ride sharing service or public transportation, identifying all the key points of interest around your office, such as where the workspace is, the bathrooms, emergency exits, etc. And even some of the key establishments that they might want to check out around your office area. This way, the new employee is up to speed and navigating your office like they've been there for years, often before they've even started their job. But another way we assist is through something called rehabilitation teaching. So hypothetically, your employee might encounter something into their work life that is overly visual or more visual than they expected it to be. Say it's a part of their job function or something they need to interact with around the office. Well, in that case, an RT specialist will schedule time to work with them, assess the situation, and determine the most adaptive techniques that they can use to navigate these challenges. But now we'd like to take a moment and show you some of these services in action. So let's introduce MCB's Director of Orientation and Mobility Services, Allie Bull.
Hello, I'm Allie Bull, Director of Orientation and Mobility at the Massachusetts Commission for the Blind, or MCB. Orientation and Mobility, or O&M as I will likely refer to it, is one of the services provided by MCB to all of its consumers. O&M covers a variety of skills with an individual, including the use of a white cane, how to access public transportation, and navigating a new space. The services we provide are community services, which means our certified orientation and mobility specialists, or COMS, meet with the consumer out in the community, whether that's at home, school, or a work site. When a new employee who is visually impaired is hired, they'll reach out to their VR counselor at MCB to get connected with O&M services. The O&M specialist will plan to meet with the employee and work on goals they may have. Here at MCB, we recently transitioned to a new building after being at our previous office space for over a decade. This meant that numerous MCB employees who are blind would need O&M in the new office space. The O&M team stepped into action to support our colleagues, creating a successful environment for everyone. The O&M team first organized the types of needs that would be required to support the staff. Keep in mind, no one's O&M plan will look exactly the same. In fact, they're often quite different. Some employees may use door-to-door paratransit, others may prefer public transit. Some may even use rideshare services to get to work. This could include Uber or Lyft. Whatever their preferred method of transportation, the O&M specialist created an individualized plan to orient the employee to their new space. The first rounds of O&M lessons included public transportation to arrive at the new office location. Since we are located in Boston, there are many different options for public transportation routes. If the employee used a paratransit or rideshare service, the O&M specialist instead met them at the new location and focused on orienting to the area around the building. Employees that were guide dog users were also oriented to dog relief areas. Once O&M began inside, employees were oriented to the lobby of the building, including any points of interest, like bathrooms, security desk, or alternative exits. We then used the elevators to travel to the correct floor. And I just want to make a quick note that not all people who are blind read Braille. So even if the elevator buttons and floors have Braille, this labeling is still functionally inaccessible to the employee if they are not a Braille reader. That's where our O&M specialist can step in and create a simple environmental modification. Small stickers made of rubber called bump dots were placed next to the elevator buttons of both the first floor and the MCB office floor, creating a simple, accessible solution. Orientation continued throughout the office space. This included covering different skills such as general orientation to the new office layout, locating emergency exits, and basic routes around the office, like from the elevator to the employee's new office or from their office to the restroom. In addition to direct O&M services, our team of certified orientation and mobility specialists can also provide consults with you, the employer. This may include simple modifications, such as applying bump dots, taping stairs with high contrast tape, or adjusting lighting to make an area safer for an employee with a visual impairment. Our goal in O&M is to make sure the person can travel safely, efficiently, and effectively within their environment. We strive for the individual to have complete independence in their travel and feel as confident as they can as they navigate their new workspace. I hope that this short narrative gave you a better understanding of the O&M supports that MCB provides. Thank you for joining today's webinar, and we look forward to future collaboration.
So you may have noticed our very own Director of Programs and Services, Joe Buzon, walking through the halls there, as well as our Human Resources Liaison, Fuad Bunjahed, and then of course we had our very own Commissioner, John Oliveira, in the video as well. So you see that as individuals are using their orientation and mobility skills, sometimes it might look like to our eyes that they might be confused or they might look a little bit lost, but with that cane going side by side. But as they're touching the cane to the wall and touching the cane to different objects, that's actually giving them information. They're learning from that information as to what space is around them. So they're navigating space very safely, even though to those of us who are sighted, it might sometimes look awkward. And then you get used to it after a while. So we've heard about orientation and mobility services, but MCB will also conduct a workplace technology assessment to determine the right tools for the legally blind employee, like screen readers, magnifiers, or voice recognition software. So let's learn more from Director of Assistive Technology, Alexander Pooler.
Hello, my name is Alexander Pooler. I'm the Director of Assistive Technology at the Massachusetts Commission for the Blind. Thank you for taking some time to join me today. I'm going to do a brief demonstration of some key assistive technology devices that we deploy with our consumers to aid them in their transition to competitive employment. In front of me, I have several pieces of technology. The main piece of technology I'm looking at right now here is a desktop video magnifier, or CCTV. Majority of our consumers have some level of usable eyesight, so these are one of the more common devices that we deploy for our consumers. This device is fairly lightweight, it's transportable, it will also fold up. I'll demonstrate that here in a moment. But the main takeaways for this device is this does video magnification. So if someone needs to be able to look at text and have that enlarged, this has a very easy to use magnifier wheel in the middle of this. And this also does different color options, enhance positive, enhance negative, for our consumers. We also have a smaller, more transportable version of this device, and it is the handheld video magnifier. And this is a really good device for somebody that needs to do quick spot reading on the go from office to office. So this device here has a handle that comes out. It is very lightweight. This is probably no more than a weight of, say, 2 decks of playing cards, and has a rechargeable battery. This is something that could be taken into a backpack or even thrown into a pocket, and it does the exact same functions, just on a smaller scale than the full-size desktop unit. Video magnification is one of the more common things that we're working with our consumers when it comes to their placement in competitive employment and looking for assistive technology tools that are going to help address their needs. Now, something that's very important to remember as we're going over some of this technology is it's not important for you to remember each technology that we're showing. What I want to show you and demonstrate is we have technology solutions for a lot of the commonly asked questions that we get about how somebody may be able to integrate into a work environment through the use of assistive technology. At MCB, the Assistive Technology Unit are the experts on this, and we do highly encourage you to reach out to us anytime you have any questions or would like to have any sort of education or additional information about what kind of technology may be available for consumers. Now, these are dedicated pieces of technology that work with people with low vision. We also have software that can be put onto a computer system. One of the more common use of softwares is a software called JAWS, and we're going to have a brief demonstration from the Assistant Director of Assistive Technology, Mr. Evan Silver, to go over the JAWS software.
And here we go. I'm going to switch over to my email.
Screen share inbox -Evan.Silver at home. Inbox replied. Pooler Alexander left parent MCB enter.
There's an email from my boss.
Thank you, Evan Silver, for helping with this demonstration of JAWS. Job access with speech left parent. JAWS right parent is a computer screen reader program for Microsoft Windows that allows blind and visually impaired users to read the screen either with a text-to-dash speech output or by a refreshable braille display. JAWS can be deployed from and training can provided by MCB in support of our consumers seeking competitive employment. Alexander Pooler, Alexander.
Okay, so the computer read me his email. I will reply.
JAWS, you are not.
I use the hotkey command Control R to reply, and I know how to type touch type on the keyboard. I've learned to type non-visually. I'm going to say thanks.
Period. Space AAVE space suggestion period enter.
It tried to offer me suggestions, but I'm going to leave it as it is.
Enter.
And I'm going to send it off.
Alt S. JAWS demo.
All right, thanks for listening.
Another piece of technology we also deploy are simple devices like this. This is a high contrast, large print keyboard, and that just makes it easier for an individual using a computer to do their input. The last piece of technology I'm going to show is this device here. This is an OCR device, stands for optical character recognition, and this device takes digital photographs of printed material and then reads it back to you through a synthesized voice. I'll show you how that process works. Now what it's doing right now is it's loading up. It's going to take a photograph. There's a shutter sound that just went off. The ticking is the processing of the material, and then when it's done processing the material, it'll start reading it back to you.
LA Common N of 01/155 Arbor 5 at 5, Celsius, Massachusetts Commission for the Blind Al.
This device is also transportable and lightweight. This folds in. This has a handle, and this can be thrown into a bag and transported as well. Again, it's not important for you to remember all these pieces of technology. It's just important for you to know that at the Massachusetts Commission for the Blind, we have these technologies available to pair up with our consumers and based on their skill set and the tasks that you give them as part of their job to ensure that they're going to be a successful employee for you. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out to me. Again, I am Alexander Pooler.
All right, so as you can see, every employee's needs are different. That's why our services are tailored to the specific job for the specific individual. So whether they need orientation and mobility services, rehab teaching, assistive technology, some people need one of the services, some people need all of the services, and quite frankly, there are others who don't need any at all. Very specific. The services are tailored to the specific job for the specific individual. And we're here to help you create a welcoming environment where your employee can thrive and your organization can benefit from their talents.
Absolutely, and we'll just point out again, if you take nothing else away from this webinar, it's that these services that we provide to you are completely free.
Great. So now let's hear from our employers. Our first guest, Christiane Widman, is a human resources practitioner with almost 40 years of experience in corporate and not-for-profit companies. Specific HR practices have been recruiting, training, disability inclusion, employee relations, and leader development. She has worked in retail, financial services, and human services industries. She started with the Regional Employment Collaboratives in 2014 when the first expansion occurred, and is currently the Assistant Director of those Regional Employment Collaboratives. Christiane, thank you for joining us today. Great to be here.
Yes, thank you so much. And so I'll be directing a couple questions at you. So Christiane, Riverside, we're very thankful, has been a long-standing partner of MCB over the years. So what I'm hoping is that perhaps you could talk a little bit about how that particular partnership has evolved over the years.
I'd be happy to. And the first adjective I think of as safe. It has been safe to work with MCB. It has been safe to ask what we may have said or felt like stupid questions, or am I phrasing something right? Or God forbid, I have inadvertently offended someone. And so I think in that instance, the first thing that came to us out of the relationship with our very first intern, who I believe was 10 years ago, thanks to Carol, sort of dogging me. I'm not sure you were stalking me, but I think you were dogging me. And we got together and it was like kindred spirits. So from that first intern to now, 10 years later, where we've had over a dozen interns over the years, some years it's been multiple interns, Dan. And then we also expanded it into Riverside. So it may help to know that the Regional Employment Collaboratives are, think of us as a department in Riverside. And we work directly with the job developers across all disability fields in Massachusetts. It's unique to Mass. MCB has always been a partner for that. So the element of making it safe is really important to me about the evolution of the relationship. And then I think it's not just having interns, we're now looking at our new employee orientation materials so that we can say, is somebody who is legally blind fully available to participate in that program? Our documents in Braille, can we ask MCB, is that something that individual needs? Because it is person first. So those are some general thoughts about evolution. And if I wasn't precise in saying this before, we have expanded from the internship program being just with the Regional Employment Collaboratives to being within Riverside for clinical positions and for IT positions. And we hope to do more of that in the future.
Thank you so much. And we usually have another guest here.
Yes.
Yes.
So our next guest joining us is Andre Lafitte.
Yep.
Andre is a strategic recruiting consultant and community liaison for Atrius Health. And he is passionate about partnering with educational, vocational, and community partners. He believes that the most important asset to any organization is the people you bring to support your organization, your mission. I can't talk today. Blah, blah. Andre taught line fencing at the International Fencing Club located in Boston through the Carroll Center for the Blind. His hope through his partnership with MCB is to remind everyone that we all see the world differently. Thank you so much for joining us, Andre.
Well, thank you all for having me here. I very much appreciate it. And fun enough of speaking about fencing for the blind, we actually just held an international competition at International Fencing Club a few weeks ago, and was even sponsored by Caitlin Zula as well with a charitable donation. So I'm excited to be here today.
Great. So Andre, you participated in one of our employment events firsthand. In fact, our virtual reverse job fair, which is coming up. And we'll be telling all of you about that a little bit shortly. What were your first impressions?
So this will sound so funny as a recruiter say this here. I was blown away by how efficient and how perfect use of finite time was to deliver quality candidates. and to almost cut out a lot of minutiae. So a lot of times if you're recruiting at a job fair, you're finding out about the person, you're trying to figure out what job actually applies to them, where do they live, what hours they want. And you guys just kind of neatly compartmentalized it and just said, here's our person, here's their resume, here's where they live, here's what they're looking for. And it just kind of was like, it just allowed me just to take in the candidate, who they were. So it just allowed me to focus on the presentation. And I was like, hey, you seem like a great fit for this department because you got this kind of personality, or for this one. So it allowed me to not have to focus on the minutia of details and logistics. I just got to focus on the person. So it was a really great way to deliver me a multitude of candidates, but in a very qualitative manner. So I loved it.
That is exactly what we like to hear. Thank you so much for that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much. And I'm going to go back to you for a moment, Christian. You already touched on this a little bit when you were talking about the interns. So yes, I mean, I've personally, some of my own clients have been interns with the Riverside Collaboratives. But you mentioned you've taken on some full-time employees. And you talked a little bit about this, but I'm wondering if you could just unpack a little bit more how MCB has worked with your teams to make everything, to get everything up to speed during the accommodations and the onboarding process.
So we, like any organization, I'm sure Andres is the same, have evolved because you have before COVID time, you have COVID time, and now we're in the post-COVID time. And each of those segments has been really interesting, and MCB has been with us the entire time. The first intern I supported was about 9 years ago, and MCB had a travel trainer come out. They worked with me to think about safety because we were in a public building that wasn't really fully ADA compliant. We also had a person using Uber, which we were very nervous about. You guys weren't, our intern wasn't. We were worried about getting in the wrong car, etc. So the second thing was to calm us down. And then in terms of onboarding, JAWS has been critical. And in fact, even before the interns started, we connected through Carol. Dan, this was before you were here. And we did a JAWS review of a cloud-based platform that we use called Basecamp. And it is the one location, holding tank, communication of leads, communication of meetings, and also the holding tank that I just expressed of sort of resources. And it is a tool we've used for years, but the first version wasn't JAWS compliant. And so we were going to scrap it. However, you guys said to us, wait, ask them if they're working on it or can become JAWS compliant without a whole new version. Well, the great answer was, you can stick with that platform, and we have, because they were releasing a new version that was JAWS compliant. Beyond that, I'm going to skip pre-COVID, right? Because it's gone. During COVID, we went 100% virtual, and we've maintained that work environment for the collaboratives. Within Riverside, not everybody is virtual. So in terms of onboarding, we've looked at person first as a concept. What can you, Dan, Carol, anybody else we're working with, to Andre's point, take that minutia of what is their transportation? What are the hours they're looking for? If they're in school through the intern program, what do they want to get out of this? Are they doing it for class credit? We've had some people who have had to do report backs to professors, and the professors then decided if they were getting academic credit for the internship, and in fact, they did get it in the one instance I remember. So I think that's been really important. As I mentioned, we're now looking at how we onboard people because even our interns are required to go to Riverside's new employee orientation, which now can be up to 4 days. It involves all kinds of required training. So I'm working with our HR team, and I've had some conversations with Carol about what do they need to be efficient, to be productive and successful in their internship. What parts of the orientation do they need? Well, they aren't going to do they aren't going to be providing medicine. So we don't need that piece of it. And our HR department at first was, no, you got to go through the whole thing. And now, because of some of the influence of MCB, we've been able to say, here's the job they're going to do, whether that's ongoing job or an internship, and here's the part they need. The second part is the materials. The opportunity to work with you all to review our materials for the onboarding program. You know, it's a lot of paperwork, Andre, right?
Yeah.
Still is. We can't make it go away. It's tax forms, it's this and that. So if we have someone who reads Braille and we know that, we can hopefully in the future prepare better for that person first approach to onboarding them and then keep it going through their employment. So those are just a few examples.
Thank you so much.
Christiane, you actually hit on a topic that I think is very important, that you didn't know what you didn't know, right, in the beginning. And
Absolutely.
I think for a lot of employers, and Dan and I actually just met with one recently too, who were asking us all kinds of questions. They were so afraid to make a mistake. And, you know, it turns out they were doing everything right. But it's normal to be nervous at first. I was a basket case when I first started working here, honestly. You know, I've been in this field for 11 years now, but it's very normal to be nervous. And that's why we're here. You know, if you haven't had that experience of working with someone, it's okay. You're not expected to, you're not born with this knowledge. You're not expected to know it. That's why we're here. We're here to help. And we're happy to guide you through the process. And every person is different, as you've seen, because you've hosted so many different interns. A great way, by the way, to familiarize yourself with our population is to host interns. However, if you have someone who's qualified and you are considering hiring them, please talk with us. We'll help you. We'll guide you through that process. So this is great. This is why we're here. So Andre, after last year's job fair, you decided to take on a more active role and join our committee, our planning committee. So what's that been like?
Well, it's been wonderful. I mean, first of all, obviously from a corporate standpoint here, if something's worked the first time, why not get more involved with it? It's just kind of the most obvious thing to think about here. But secondly, I've just been very much enjoying the collaboration and kind of getting to see kind of the underworkings here. Obviously, the first job fair, I got to see like this awesome first experience. So I was like, hey, I want to get more involved with it. Just because it's, you know, something I happen to be passionate about. As I said, this is a community I've worked with. So I'm very like all about it here. But I think just as far as like collaboration, what we just is like any other good community, which is you look at a product, you see what works, and you try to look at other things like what we can improve on and tease into, and we're just going to keep distilling it until it's a more and more perfect project. And I've just been absolutely loving it, and just very active communication, which is key. That's like the most key aspect to any good partnership, is just actively letting people know what's going on.
That's great. So what advice, this is to both of you, what advice might you offer to employers who are in the audience today who might be considering, and we hope you're all considering, potentially hiring one of our job seekers?
I'll take this one. I would just say, just look at it like any other job fair and just assess, is the candidate qualified? Can they meet the essential functions of your role? Are they able to get there when they're supposed to? And if the answer is yes, like go past go. If the answer is, well, you know, the candidate seems great, but you know, maybe they live 2 hours away, let's see if there's a different location that's closer. So it's just treating this list like any other job fair. And then I can definitely say firsthand, because we made a hire from the last job fair, it was really smooth. Like, it's very easy. Just your HR team will partner with MCB and it's going to turn out fine. So that's just, and each candidate's needs are different. So will the, you know, adaptive technologies, may it be JAWS or Braille or whatever else may need to be there, but it's pretty straightforward. So whatever that like nervous energy you have, although very understandable, you're going to find is not warranted and will naturally dissipate after each hire you make.
You know, you talk about nervous energy. We all have it. And when we know that something has been added to the plate, we get more nervous. And then add to that, especially as employers, we live in such a litigious society that the employment of people who are not considered quote, quote, norm, and that, yes, that was with air quotes, makes us more nervous. And I'll go back to one of the first things I said about working with MCB. This is a safe environment. This is a safe partnership. We have been able to ask questions so that we are more prepared. And then, as you said, what if that person lives 2 hours away? Problem solve. If the person's qualified, how can we make this work and be successful? And the other thing that I would just say, Dan and Carol, jump right in. You know, you learn so much, and it really allows you to think about not just diversity, but how you support every individual that you employ, because we are all individuals first. And if we're able to understand what somebody needs as an individual, it only can increase success in my book, you know.
And all great points. And remember that, you know, it's not charity. There are some highly skilled, highly talented individuals looking for jobs. They're going to do the job. They're just going to do it differently than an individual would do using their vision. So definitely keep that in mind. And again, any questions, they're all safe to ask us directly. We're more than happy to go over all of this to help you hire, to help that whole process run smoothly. And of course, we can help you through the interview process. If they're not the one that gets hired, they're not the one that gets hired. You know, we're not saying you have to hire everyone we send to you. I mean, how wonderful would that be? But that's not realistic. We want you to hire qualified candidates, and we want you to remember that our candidates, many of them are going to be very, very highly qualified. So just consider them, and we'll walk you through the process.
You know, Carol, if I could add one more thing. Diversity has been beat up a little bit lately. And, you know, when you think about 30% gap between the employment rate of individuals who are legally blind and the general population, that's a huge gap. I would like to invite everybody and encourage my team to re-up in their commitment to say, let's close the gap. Diversity is alive, it's well, it's necessary. We're an incredibly diverse area in Massachusetts, and diversity only makes us stronger. So jump right in.
To jump off that, because I'm a math guy too. Aside from embracing inclusivity and diversity, because it's obviously the correct moral, ethical thing to do, it is also a smart business practice. If I forget, it was like Forbes Department of Commerce showed that if you hire people that are differently able, your retention rate increases with that employee about 20-30%. So you're reducing turnover costs. And also companies that embrace inclusive models also are tend to be more profitable as well. So aside from just doing like the nice thing to do, it is just good business practice and sound. Absolutely.
Great. Well, thank you both. And I hope that you in the audience have all found this to be helpful. We're going to open it up for questions in a moment, but please remember, we are more than happy to meet with you at your place of business or virtually, whether you have a quick question or you want us to meet with a whole team. We're very happy to do that. So please do not hesitate to reach out. So if you have any questions, please put them in the chat or raise your hand.
Yeah, and I'll just point out that, you know, as we may be slightly short on time, so if we don't have a chance to get to all of your questions, which hopefully we can, you can also feel free to put your contact information in the chat, and then we will collect it and reach out to you at a later date. Or you can reach out to me personally. My email is daniel.j.martin, then the number 2@mass.gov. Hopefully that's on screen as well. And you can reach out to me and can address any questions that you might have.
All right. So let's open it up for questions. I will say a few, we did have a comment submitted in advance. One person was asking about best practices for interviewing and onboarding candidates. And we'll all kind of jump in on these. But, you know, I did touch on this earlier, but really focus on the candidate's qualifications for the job. Questions that are unrelated, such as when or how a person lost their sight, that's not relevant to the interview. We can provide a list of do's and don'ts to prepare your team if that's something that you want. I mentioned earlier that you can ask about accommodations that are needed for the interview, but again, you should not ask about accommodations for the job until a conditional offer has been made. You can request evidence or demonstrations of a specific skill, but only if you're asking the same of all candidates. And you want to avoid asking about the disability or whether the job might be too difficult because of it. If they've applied for the job, they have the skills, they have the ability to do it. And especially if we're sending them over, if they've gone through us and we're referring them, we have vetted them as well. So we know that they have the minimum qualifications. Again, they're gonna do things maybe differently, but they're gonna be getting the same work done. Any of you want to add to that?
I mean, I can add just a part of that vetting process is having conversations about disclosure, which can be a tricky subject. And so we very much encourage our consumers to be honest about disclosure, but also when to reveal it at the correct time. And that really just comes down to being honest about what their levels of abilities are and what their particular needs will be for accommodations, and ensuring that that's a discussion that is at least had prior to the job starting, because the last thing you want to have happen is a situation where you're on the job for a couple months and then you encounter something that is beyond the scope of the employee's visual capabilities, which could have been addressed during the onboarding process. So typically speaking, they're going to find the right time to disclose where their needs are, whether it's at the end of an interview or if it comes up, there's a particularly good point to address it in the conversation. So I would say it really just comes down to let them take the lead on that particular topic.
We have a few questions coming in from the chat. One question, is the needle moving at all regarding unemployment data that Christine shared?
So, I mean, that number that we discussed appears to be the most accurate numbers according to the Census Bureau.
Yeah. In Massachusetts, I have not looked at this really great tool that's been put out, which is a dashboard for the disability community. And I don't know how far it breaks down, but it could be interesting to look at that and see if that needle is moving. I think in Massachusetts, we have a pretty good reputation of supporting the broad disability community. So hopefully, at least in Massachusetts, the needle.
Relative to the rest of the country, absolutely, that's correct.
We have another question. I'm curious about best practices during virtual meetings. Is it best to keep screens off? Should we practice self-description? And when participating in meetings, once off mute, should we state our name?
Very, very good question.
I can speak to it if you'd like.
Yes, well, yeah, go ahead.
So I think an important thing to note is first and foremost, what platform you're using for the virtual meeting. So all of our clients that we work with at one point or another are trained in using Zoom once they're comfortable with their level of computer use. That's the most common platform that is used for video conferencing among the blind community in Massachusetts, primarily because it's among the most accessible with integration with key commands. Some businesses, of course, have their own proprietary softwares or another third-party program that they'll use, such as Premiere Virtual is one. And I think in that case, I think just having that knowledge, making it clear ahead of time that that is what you're utilizing, it would be the first step, so that the individual that's applying can consult with our team and determine whether or not they're going to encounter any barriers. Regarding the question of cameras, we also, part of that training in Zoom is making sure that they are aware of where their webcam is pointed so they can position themselves optimally. making sure that their background is clear, if they're or clear of clutter, if they're not using a virtual background, just like you would instruct any job candidate to do in a Zoom meeting. So typically speaking, they are going to be perfectly fine using a webcam. Of course, it's a question you can ask, and again, always ask if there's a question. And I think, describing yourself is something you can do, particularly when addressing somebody who has a vision difficulty, or just announcing your name when you're about to speak if there's multiple people talking at a conference. That can be helpful.
Yeah, and then again, keep in mind that, again, we mentioned earlier that vision impairment is a spectrum. So some people may have no problem looking at the screen. It may be that their peripheral vision is the challenge, but they may have central vision and can see, maybe they're making it bigger. So, most people who are legally blind do have some vision, and then there are some who are totally blind, of course. So, that is something to take into consideration. And, as we said, always just ask the person.
And we have another question that just popped in. Are MCB candidates able to use the Commonwealth's Mass Careers job site?
Yes, yes, they absolutely are. And of course, Dan and I and the VR team, vocational rehab team, are here to assist if they need assistance. But generally speaking, it's quite accessible, and they are able to use that. But we can also walk them through that if needed. Very good question. So someone else submitted in advance, and I'm wondering, Andre and Christiane, if you might want to add to this. So somebody suggested discussing, and you talked about this a little bit, but being being proactive rather than reactive when it comes to being accessible for peers of various abilities.
I'm not sure what the question is. Really, it's really broad. What I'm going to take out of it is that our particular group, and we're a group of under 20 people, some full-time, some part-time, is going back to safe and person first. We are all different. We all come with different life's experience. So within our group as a peer group, and we're very much a self-directed team, it's what is going to be most helpful to have that person be successful. If there are vision impairments or someone is totally blind, that is part of their makeup, and how do we support that? So one of the questions that just came in about being on video or not. When you're on Zoom, please be on video. It's really horrible to not